So today we're going to be talking about Angelica. Everybody likes black markers. Angelica root. Its name tells us a lot. Angelica Arch. I think it's Angelica Archangelica. Oh yeah, doing good. All right. Archangelica. Yeah. So I'll pass this around. By the way, one of the coolest plants you can ever have in your garden to amaze your friends. If you're a plant person, if you have it likes a semi-shady area, as far as my experience with it, you could probably grow it in full sun if you kept it moist. I don't know enough about growing plants, but it is. Let me find a picture of it for you. It is one of the most impressive plants in the whole world. And it's very tall. Plant. The only problem is it looks an awful lot like poison hemlock if you're not very knowledgeable. So, not a very good picture, but it's pretty cool looking. Just not a very good picture, but you have to imagine this is like 8 to 12 foot tall, huge stalks, purplish stalks, which usually when we see purplish stalks like poison hemlock, it means, ooh, watch out. This is like a very powerful plant. Um, it gets these like seeds that will happen after it flowers, but this is like huge stalks. You know, at the root, they're going to be like big as your fist. They're huge. That's just regal plant. It's just absolutely stunning. The only problem is I think it's just a biennial, so it just lives for 2 years. But you can buy, what I do is I buy the bare roots and I just plant them this time of year and they just come up and you don't have to wait. So I'll pass this around. It does go to seed fairly easy. But I had it on the edge of a forest at my old house. It's just a breathtaking plant. It is amazing. It's just amazing. It's huge. I mean, it gets like 6 to 8 foot wide. I mean, it's just almost like a tree. It's in the Angelica or like the carrot celery family. So it's got a lot of people say it smells celery like, which all those plants kind of do. Its energy is unique. It's one of the most used plants. We're really syncing it up with the season. So there's other Angelica roots that are native to Nebraska. There's other Angelica plants that are native to other parts of the world, but this is the main one we use. It's unique because its energy is very warm. Its taste, you'll notice, is very bitter, but it's also very aromatic, right? Aromatic is where the warm energy comes from. So things that are typically aromatic tend to be pretty warm as a general rule. But you can taste it. It's bitter, but it's not nauseating. It's not disgusting bitter. Like a lot of bitters that we'll talk about for digestion will just make people queasy if you drank a tea. This is like, I think pleasant-ish. How many people think it's pleasant?
The taste
Some people not.
of the root is definitely bitter, but it's got that sweet.
It's a little this aromatic. It's also oily. So what's unique about this is that almost all digestive bitters are usually pretty drying because that's what the bitter flavor does. It dries things out. However, Angelica is one of those unique bitters that's a little moisturizing. So the bitter part is good for the damp tissue state, and the moisturizing part is good for the dry tissue state. So basically, it's a bitter.
Wave your hands in the air.
And if we're gonna make
Meeting adjourned.
digestive formulas
you,
for
Lindsay.
young
It's been a
children,
pleasure. Thanks
adults,
for
the
coming
elderly,
tonight.
it's just one of the best digestive bitters
Thanks
ever
Bye, guys.
for all
Bye-bye.
kinds of digestive problems. It has a lot of properties. Its main properties is that it is a warming diaphoretic. That means we're going to use this at the onset of colds or flus to induce that sweat. It's also a little bit antibacterial and a lot antiviral. So it is good for like the cold or flu or influenza. I don't know how helpful it is for COVID. I never used it that much for COVID, but probably pretty helpful. We use it historically for a lot of onset of colds or flus. And what's unique about it also is that it is also a warming expectorant. So it clears your lungs out too. So it helps you cough up mucus, get mucus out. So this is going to be for very dry or wet cough, either one. So it's kind of unique in that sense. It's kind of safe to use for all types of cough and lung infections. Because it is so strengthening to digestion, we give this to children and adults and the elderly all the time. We put it in their formulas. We do everything with it because it's just so well tolerated. Okay, so we can use it for the onset of colds or flus or infections. We can use it, because it's warming, it doesn't really bring a fever down as much as like something that's cooling like elderflower or linden flower, but it can in the right situation. But it's also very good when people have infections with achy joints and muscles, because this is a really good anti-arthritis herb. So it's very good for joint pain and other problems. So we use it a lot when people have a lot of cold or flu. So this is why we use it a lot during for Lyme's disease and that too, when people have chronic infections where their joints and muscles hurt all the time. Okay. This is an old remedy for preventing and helping plague outbreaks historically. So like we talked about with boneset and echinacea and honeysuckle, if there ever is some new viruses that emerges, right, that we know nothing about, this is one of the things we'll definitely safely throw at it. So it's been used in European history for all kinds of contagious epidemics. Paracelsus used it a lot during plagues of his time with great success in both preventing and also helping with patients that were sick. So it's a really good herb for the immune system. Probably does not get used enough for that today. We mentioned it's good for chronic respiratory mucus, but how we use this herb is more so for when people have very weak digestion, like babies or adults or elderly people, when people have like food allergies and indigestion and just have leaky gut syndrome, people always start to make mucus as a result of that. So this is like just a great mucus clearing herb by actually treating the root of it, which is our digestion. That makes sense? I want to make sure everybody gets that. We'll talk about that a lot with bitters this next couple weeks. This is a really good herb we're strengthening the entire process of digestion and assimilation. So you don't have as much mucus, phlegm, runny nose, wet cough, mucus. Does that make sense to everybody?
I know, what you were saying about how our body develops mucus to protect itself.
Yeah.
Cause I got hit in the eye really hard last week and
Mhm.
my nose was so full of snot and my
Mhm.
eye would not stop
Mhm.
watering.
Mm-hmm. 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 So you got a live case study, right?
The tongue is bitter, but it also feels numb. Is there
Mhm.
properties
A
of
lot
that?
of bitters will have a little bit of a tingly, numbing sensation slightly. Mhm.
Is it good for a poultice type thing? Or
Yeah, we'll talk about
Okay.
that. Yep. Yep. This has a lot of uses. This is probably one of the top 10 historically, like in Western herbalism through Europe, probably one of the top 10 most commonly used herbs historically. It's just used by everybody. So much so that when Culpeper wrote about it, he said, I don't need to write anything about it because everybody knows all the virtues of Angelica. So much so that in different parts of Europe and England, it was law that if you sold your property, you were legally allowed to dig your Angelica roots and take them with you. That was like a legal right you had to take your, it was unique to Angelica plants only. It was that widely used like around the 1000 to 1200 age. So very cool. Okay. So this is historically a really important joint herb that we don't use it so much for today. The reason is we can appreciate now is that historically arthritis was treated through the liver and the gut, which is the cause of most inflammation, right? In our body. This is the whole leaky gut idea why people have arthritis and chronic pain and fibromyalgia is often because of the gut. So we have to say this is a really good herb for all types of arthritis or joint pain if you also have bad digestion. It's especially helpful. Okay. Also really good for gout because all bitters are good for gout. One of the great gout remedies. Remember, gout is not always just in like a toe or the toes. Sometimes we can have weird manifestation of gout where it can affect other joints and parts of the body too. Okay. Okay. One of the other main uses of Angelica is as a heart tonic. It is a very powerful tonic for the heart and circulation. It's very warming and it's very aromatic. That means it has a very diffusive or circulatory nature. So its energy is outward, kind of pushes stuff out and invigorates blood flow through the body. So this is used a lot when there is a circulatory blockage, like varicose veins. Women that have delivered children and carried children have a lot of pelvic blood stagnation we've talked about. This is a great pelvic floor pain, scar tissue remedy. This is a great remedy for scar tissue in your abdomen from any kind of surgery ever. Great, great scar tissue remedy. We would especially use this a lot for people who are prone to easy bruising also. Okay. Doesn't really lower blood pressure. It's a little bit of a heart tonic, but more of an emotional heart tonic that we'll get into. It's very good for like an emotionally blocked or traumatized heart. Okay. So one of the old German names for it is chest wort, right? When we hear the word wort, wort means plant. So chest plant, because it was used so much historically for respiratory mucus. Used a lot for uterine and ovarian problems historically. Probably don't use it as much as we should today. But historically, that's a really important use to remember. It's also a little bit of a mild nervine. Gently kind of calms the nerves. Not as much as like skullcap or something, but it is like a gentle nerve tonic. Okay. It is one of my favorite catalysts. I'll throw it in formulas a lot for catalyst. It's a really, really good herb for people who have skin problems from leaky gut or food allergies. If you have like eczema, psoriasis, or you get hives from food reactions, this is a great remedy. It's also a really good remedy for people who have what we call cold hives or cold urticaria. So cold urticaria is where a lot of times dermatologists will call it a cold allergy, which is like using our vocabulary, right? So people can be reactive to, allergic to the cold. Like if cold wind blows on them, they'll get like hives. Or if they'll get like itchy skin, or if they're in cold water, they'll break out. So we use this for that very specific skin condition. Okay, everybody following? Okay, it's also one of our great dream pillow herbs. This is a major dream pillow herb. This is a major dreaming herb. This is bear medicine. Through like a lot of different indigenous cultures would call this bear medicine. Most of your plants that are bitter and aromatic and oily tend to be bear medicines for bear kapha-like people, right? But here, this herb is used a lot to induce dreams. Together, one of my favorite combinations is St. John's wort with Angelica is very good for nightmares. We put it in a dream pillow. Everybody knows how to make a dream pillow. You just take a little bit of the herb and you can either just make a little cute little pillow, kind of like most of us probably grew up with the tooth fairy pillows, right? Kind of like a little pillow like that. Or you could just put it in a little cloth bag and just put it in the pillowcase. You just sleep on it with your head on it. So we're going to use this to help induce lucid dreaming for people who are doing dream work or for people who have nightmares. It's used a lot for sleep, but it's not necessarily sedative. It's just good for the whole dreaming process. It's angelic. Yeah, we'll get to that part too, for sure. But digestion wise, it's easier to say there's just nothing this doesn't help. Except maybe like bloody stools and stuff is about the only thing it doesn't help. But since it's a bitter, which we'll talk about here shortly, any kind of digestive problem almost. Acid reflux, bloating, gas, indigestion, diarrhea, constipation, excessive appetite, low appetite, either one. Angelica helps. A lack of digestive enzymes, the inability to digest fats or oils, just in general, poor digestion of any kind. It's also really good for food poisoning and intestinal viruses like the one going around right now. And the flu, the influenza variation going around this year attacks the gut more than previous varieties, as many of you know, right? So food poisoning, intestinal viruses, those types of things, okay? Just about everything for the gut, yeah.
What about like lactose intolerant?
Lactose and celiac and lactose intolerant, like this herb is helpful, like if you have to eat it or you're exposed to it, but doesn't necessarily cure it, but it will help you if you're having the side effects of it. or if you eat some accidentally, or you're going to eat some because you're going to a Christmas party or something, and sometimes you just have to do it, right? Unfortunately. Okay.
So online, would you consider this a diaphoretic herb and then this be for like lung infection?
Yeah, like we said, this is a warming diaphoretic, and it is a warming expectorant. So it is for coughing of all kind and to induce sweating. That just because it's warm, we typically don't use warm diaphoretics to bring a fever down. We use cool diaphoretics. That's the only probably time we wouldn't use this right out of the gate. Okay. Okay. Well, skin topically, we're going to use this. We could make a salve out of this. We could just rub the tincture on our body. We could do a bath, like however we want to get this on our body. This is a main ingredient for sore muscles, sore joints, trauma to any tissue, like you fall and break your arm or have bad bruising or get in a car accident, have contusions or bruising. It's one of our great bruising trauma remedies. This is also the secret main ingredient in chartreuse, which is a very well-known European liqueur, and also a lot of other traditional alcohols made by monasteries in Europe, which a lot. I don't know if you know that history. It's pretty interesting. So a lot of monasteries have paid their bills through the ages by making herbal alcohols and liqueurs and things. That this is going to be a main ingredient in a lot of liqueurs. It's also used a lot as a food historically too. So you can use the stems and leaves and roots are all used historically differently. Trying to find that quote from history. Okay. The only warning about this is it does kind of look like poisonous hemlock. So if you're out in the wild and you think it's Angelica, which does grow here, well, there's some by the Niobrara River that I have found. There's like a shrubby version of this that grows on the Niobrara. We'll see maybe, but it looks a lot like poison hemlock. So just be aware if you're going to harvest this in the wild, you're going to want to be a little careful. Okay. If you're going to use this for growing in your garden, wherever you buy it from, you're going to be safe. I wouldn't worry about that. So, okay. Now, some of the emotional uses. So, this is psychologically one of the most important herbs for emotional trauma that's affected our heart. So this would be like family trauma, relationship trauma, sexual trauma, verbal, like any kind of trauma emotionally we would have. This is one of our most important plants. It really helps to heal the heart on a deep level emotionally. It's historically used for depression a lot.
Just gonna ask.
Yeah. We'll find this with a lot of bitters. We find that historically they're good for depression. Should that surprise us? Because our gut is where most our serotonin and neurotransmitters are made. So, I mean, obviously anything that helps our digestion is going to help depression and those things, right? So there's probably other ways that it does this constitutionally, but it is a very important depression remedy historically. We always say it's very good for people that have a heavy, damp heart, sad. So when you have a damp heart, it's very emotionally heavy. Like it feels heavy. The person looks heavy, very downward, right? Very down, very melancholy, very isolated, very quiet, very sad. That's called like a damp depression.
So would this be an out and up movement? then?
It's out and up. Yeah. Yeah. Mostly out, but definitely up. Yeah. Yeah. This is also a great herb to release attachments on your heart, or what a lot of people might call your heart chakra. You have old relationship attachments, little tentacles where other people are still affecting you that you can't quite break free of. This is a great remedy for that. Historically, this is used within like the church history. It's used for possessions, spiritual possessions. If you go back into the monastery traditions of Europe, and it's also used after people have been possessed, because usually what happens is their heart is kind of a mess after that experience. So it's used during and also to prevent negativity from affecting you.
You say during, you mean while the person has this attachment?
Yeah, so while the person has one, to help prevent it and also to like recover from it. Historically. So we also find a lot of cultures use this. This would be what we call a medicine pouch plant. So a lot of times people will have like a pouch they carry, where they'll, a lot of like, you know, old timers will have like a little piece of the root like in their pocket or something they would carry for good luck, or to protect you when you travel, or if you feel like you're going into a place that has a lot of anger or negativity or something, you would carry a piece of this plant with you. So sometimes we call these medicine pouch herbs because that's what a lot of indigenous cultures will do. Okay. Okay, let's see here. But there's a lot more spiritually here. There's some wild stuff. Okay. So yeah, this is a protected, usually it's combined with St. John's wort, like within a lot of the church traditions historically, to bless areas, to sanctify areas. You would often make a tea of it and like sprinkle it on people, you know, kind of like similar of holy water, right? Historically, this is also what's called thunder medicine. So what is thunder medicine? What do you think that's about? Thunder medicine is kind of like that idea where like you need the strength of thunder, like you're stuck, you're so stuck in your life. You're at a crossroads, you're stuck in a pattern you can't get out of. Maybe it's a destructive pattern, maybe it's a trauma pattern, maybe it's like a bad luck, bad choices pattern, but you just can't pull yourself up and out of something.
It's the bootstrap medicine.
The bootstrap medicine. That's a good Nebraska way of saying that. The bootstrap medicine. So it helps to remove all of these attachments that are upon us. And it has a bit of like power or strength to do that. Historically, this is also called the herb of the West, meaning this is like an herb people go to in different cultures when they're trying to connect to their ancestry. You want to draw on the wisdom of your ancestors that have passed on before you. You're calling on their strength, their guidance. You want to maybe connect with them, or just draw on their strength, like metaphor, right? Just really draw upon their strength emotionally. Okay. It's a really great massage thing to use a massage for protection also. This is a very traditional bear medicine for sure. We'll talk about that someday. Thunder medicine also deeply treats like brain and spinal cord diseases. So when we have serious diseases like MS, ALS, damage to the spine, where people have lost the ability to move limbs and things like that, this is something we would rub on the spine, rub on the body, probably give them internally also. So another German name for this plant is fearwort because it's historically used to overcome fear. You need to be courageous like a bear, right? Okay. Just another tidbit. Always collected all these little fun little things. Historically, a lot of cultures, when babies are born, they save the umbilical cords. Like I have my children's umbilical cords hanging on their walls still. They're in a pouch, but they always forget about it then occasionally. About once a year, I remind them, like, oh, that's so gross. That's disgusting. Usually Angelica is stored with the umbilical cord. Because like historically the umbilical cord, because it's stem cells, right? The ancient cultures knew this. So they would actually use it to give to the baby or the child when they're an adult, if they would ever become like deathly ill. You would make like a tea of part of the placenta or umbilical cord to like kind of revive them if everything else failed. It's like ancient stem cell concept, really. Okay. Just a great herb. I probably use this, the most common digestive herb I use, flat out. Use a ton of this plant every day. Even sometimes I'll just put a little bit in any formula as a catalyst, because it helps blood flow and circulation, and it's great for digestion and never bothers anybody's digestion either. I've never seen anybody bothered by this plant, including infants and elderly people that were very fragile. I've never seen it bother anybody. Makes a great tincture, makes a great glycerite too. Makes a great tea. You can't really find it as a capsule for some reason, so we're kind of limited to tinctures or glycerites or teas. I think it's pleasant. It's not bad. The tincture's a little more bitey. It's more aromatic and more bitter. It really hits you a little bit harder. So, but I've never really had anybody like that reacted bad to it in a formula. So, questions on it? Salves? Great salve herb. Should be used, especially for like more poor circulation or nerve pain or nerve damage as a salve.
As a poultice?
As a poultice, it's really good for. You can also use this herb.
To pull anything out, but.
You can also use this herb. How do we say that? This is like an herb you can use to, how would we say this in modern times? Modern times, we would say this could be used as part of a rejuvenating protocol topically, where we would make a poultice or a liniment, or we would make a salve and rub it on the kidneys, rub it over the adrenals, and rub it over like the navel area, umbilical area, to really help somebody have like a boost of vitality or energy. Would be a modern way of saying this.
I don't want to put it on the heart.
That would be good too. It's a great
Rose
heart
petals or
liniment.
something.
Yeah. Topically with rose petals, that would be a great combination. So umbilical area, adrenals. Smells bear-like to me. It smells like a bear cave. I think it smells like a bear cave. Okay, any other questions on Angelica? It's a great herb. So you can grow this pretty easy. I think as long as you got a semi-shady spot, you're good to go. Any other questions on Angelica? It's a pretty cool
So,
plant.
Yes, and you're not growing it, but if it's out here naturally in the woods, how does it continue? It's like a tuber, but I mean, if you got
It's
roots.
prolific seeds. It's
oh, so
prolific
it's the
seed
seeds,
maker.
then they just keep.
They
planting it.
they
Okay.
can self-seed over time. Yeah. Hmm. I mean, this plant is so huge. It's just like looks like a human guardian. I mean, it really, the old Europeans called it a guardian plant. It almost looks like a human. When I had mine growing and when I had the big farm and country, it just almost looked like a human. Every time I walked by it, I would like do a double check out of the side of my eye because it just has like a kind of humanoid like look about it. So really, 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 really cool plant. It's used a lot historically with all kinds of gynecology conditions, but it's used a little bit historically in menopause, and used a little bit historically for like premenstrual cramps and pains and fibroids and cysts, but we would use it like that, I would say, as a supportive herb, but not as like a primary herb. It has some phytoestrogens in it. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily good for menopause or anything like that. So it's not really used that much historically for menopause and that.
When you say historically, do you mean that it's not used in this way anymore? Because
Yeah, it's not as commonly used like in America or Europe that I know of that much. I mean, you'll see it in like menopause formulas as like a catalyst, a small amount or something, but not as like a primary component. Doesn't mean it doesn't work for that. I mean, it's something I just have never used myself much. So yeah.
So any use for the leaves or the seed?
The seeds are very similar, but extremely aromatic. So they're even better for digestion. Allegedly, the seeds can make people sun sensitive. So you can't really buy it, the seeds. It'd be something you have to make yourself. We have one here we made. The leaves, I don't know that much. They were used more for eating. The stems were used in different eating and cooking traditions. Never tried the stems that much. The stems are hollow. So typically when we see hollow stems, it usually means like a up into your higher states of mind. That's like the doctrine of signatures. So it's a very used a lot for, yeah, mental, probably has a lot more properties for memory than we probably have really ever studied, I would imagine. Okay. Good. So that's a wrap